Do you know what it feels like to carry 108 years inside a single human frame? People tiptoe around me now. They look at me with pity or awe, and they ask me in quiet, fragile voices if I am afraid of dying. Afraid? Child. Asking me if I am afraid of dying is like asking a sailor who has been at sea for 90 brutal years if he is afraid of finally seeing the shore. I am not afraid of the shore. I am just so very tired of the waves. I was born in 1918. I want you to truly think about that for a moment. The world was choking on the Spanish flu, coughing from the ashes of the Great War. I remember a world lit by kerosene and heated by heavy iron coal stoves. Horses still pulled heavy wooden carts down rutted dirt roads. Radios were considered a modern miracle. A loaf of bread cost a few pennies. And I was small enough to fit securely in my mother's one arm. Now I sit here, more than a century later, watching you hold glowing glass screens in your hands, speaking to people across oceans. I have watched the world shed its skin a dozen times over. But now, I sit in a body that feels exactly like an old abandoned house in the dead of winter. The wood creaks with every step. The windows rattle in the wind. The plumbing doesn't work like it used to. The roof leaks. Every morning I wake up, I open my eyes to the ceiling, and I take inventory. Still breathing, still here, still assigned yet another day upon this earth. And I don't curse it. I thank God for it. But I do not cling to it either. You are afraid of death because your story still feels so terribly unfinished. Your telephone still rings. Your calendar still fills up with appointments and obligations. Your name is still being called in busy rooms. You still believe, with all the arrogance of youth, that the best chapter is somewhere ahead of you. At 40, at 60, even at 80, the music is still playing for you. You are still on the dance floor. But me? My orchestra packed up their instruments and went home decades ago. My husband, Arthur, gone 37 years now. My older sister, gone. The women I worked beside in the munitions factory during the Second World War, all gone. Even my doctor, the young man who sternly told me to eat less salt when I was 70. He has been buried for 20 years. I have even survived 2 of my own children, one as a fragile toddler and one as a frail old man of 82. You want to know about true pain? Death is not pain. Outliving your own babies, that is pain. I no longer live in a modern city. I am living in an echo. When I walk into a crowded room, I see people that you cannot see. I am surrounded by ghosts, but they are warm ghosts. I remember the sharp, stinging smell of those coal stoves in November. I remember the exact, terrifying weight of the first time I held my newborn son. I remember the precise way Arthur's dark hair fell across his forehead, and the way he looked at me the night we danced in 1946, when the world finally felt safe again. When I finally go, I am not being evicted from this life. I am being reunited with it. But listen to me carefully now. This is the part nobody ever tells you. You think death is a hunter. You imagine it as a dark figure stalking you through the woods, waiting to strike. That is a young person's dramatic imagination. At my age, you realize death is not a hunter at all. It is simply a closing bell. Think of a long, exhausting shift at a massive, noisy factory. The whistle blows. The deafening machines finally quiet down. The heavy overhead lights begin to dim one by one. The workers wipe their hands and head for the doors. The whistle blowing doesn't mean the factory failed. It simply means the shift is over. It is time to rest. The tragedy of life is not that the whistle eventually blows. The tragedy is standing there in the sudden quiet, looking at your hands and realizing you never actually did the work. You never built anything. You kept your courage folded up in your pocket. You kept your deepest love unspoken because you were afraid of looking foolish. You kept your forgiveness locked away in a dark drawer, saving it like emergency money that you never spent. And then, ding, time, Isaiah, up. That is what actually scares people. Not death. Regret. The cold, heavy realization of a life unlived. My life? Oh, it is not clean. It is not polished. It is scratched up and popping like a worn-out vinyl record. I made terrible mistakes. I lost my temper when I should have been patient. I worried far too much about what the neighbors thought of my garden, instead of enjoying the flowers. I worked too many hours in my 50s. I missed my daughter's piano recital once in 1962, and I still feel the sting of that regret in my chest today. But I also apologized. I swallowed my bitter pride. I said I love you to my grandchildren until it thoroughly embarrassed them. I took the train trip across the country when Arthur and I could barely afford the tickets. I forgave my sister for a cruel word before the cancer took her voice away. If you do those things, truly do them with a naked heart, something inside you shifts. Death stops looking like a terrifying cliff you are about to fall off, and it starts looking like a quiet, familiar doorway. Now let me tell you something else. A secret about the very end. The body knows. Oh yes, it knows exactly what to do. You worry about the physical pain. You worry about the sterile hospital machines. You worry about gasping and terror and fighting for breath. But when it is truly your time, the body begins to power down so gently. It is not a violent crash. It is like an old grand theatre, slowly, beautifully dimming its chandeliers after the final act has concluded. You grow sleepy. The food loses its flavor, and you don't mind. The loud, chaotic noise of the world outside your window becomes distant, like a radio playing in another room. It is not a failure of the flesh. It is a brilliant, merciful design. When my Arthur passed away, I was sitting right beside him, holding his fragile hand. In his very last seconds on this earth, his face changed. It was not a face of fear. It was not a face of struggle or panic. It was recognition. It was as if he had suddenly remembered a beautiful, vital thing that he had forgotten his entire life. His eyes widened slightly, not in terror, but in absolute realization. And then he smiled. Not the polite smile he gave me at the dinner table, not the frozen smile he used for family photographs, a completely different one. A profound, private, knowing smile. And in that exact fraction of a second, every ounce of fear I ever held about death just cracked and crumbled into dust. Because no human being smiles like that if they are falling into an endless, empty darkness. They only smile like that if they are walking into the light. So, why am I telling you all of this? I am not telling you so that you rush toward the exit door. I am telling you so that you stop wasting the beautiful, messy middle of your story. The crippling fear of death is almost always just evidence of an unlived life. You are so afraid of the end because you are constantly postponing the present. You are postponing the difficult apology. You are postponing the terrifying career move. You are postponing telling the absolute truth. You are postponing your own joy, waiting for a better time. You walk around acting as if you are going to sit down and negotiate a contract with time later on. You won't. Time does not negotiate with anyone. It only concludes. If you want to sit in a chair at 108 years old and feel what I feel right now, which is absolute, unshakable peace, then you need to start emptying your pockets today. Say the terrifying thing. Make the difficult call. Take the massive risk. Wear the ridiculous, brightly colored outfit. Eat the rich chocolate cake. Stop rehearsing your life in the mirror and start actually performing it on the stage. When you finally reach this extreme age, you do not sit around wishing for more years. You wish for completeness. There is a massive difference between the two. More is just quantity. Complete is peace. I am not desperate to stay here, but I am not bitter about leaving either. I have seen 5 generations of my own bloodline breathe the air of this earth. I have watched the world evolve from hand-delivered telegrams to metal satellites floating in the stars. I have held tiny crying babies who are now grey-haired grandparents themselves. I have buried people I loved far more than my own breath. I have lived fully, completely, without reservation. And that is exactly why my hands are not trembling today. If tomorrow morning's sun does not rise for me, I will not feel robbed by the universe. I will feel beautifully, perfectly finished. That is what you must aim for, my child. Not a foolish illusion of immortality. Completion. When you finally receive the telephone call that I have passed on, do not lower your head in sorrow. Do not whisper my name in pity. Walk into the room, open a window wide, and let the fresh air rush in. Play a vinyl record of something old and warm. Pour a glass of wine and laugh out loud at something incredibly foolish. Because I did not lose a battle. I did not fail. I simply reached the final page of a very long, very beautiful book. And I can promise you, I did not leave the pages blank. You take your sweet time getting here. Enjoy the journey. But when you finally do arrive at the end, arrive completely exhausted. Arrive entirely used up. Arrive with your pockets totally empty of love and courage and words. That, my dear, is the only way to actually win this game.